What's up, guys? It's ATL Beast on the Madden Scrubs podcast. In this episode, we're going to get to know our special guest, Keyshawn, aka the 49ers. We'll all talk about the draft, the Super Bowl, and make some way too early predictions. Buckle up, because I think this is one you're going to enjoy.
Introduce a little anarchy. Upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos.
This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the U.S. government. Commencing at the siren, any and all crime, including murder, will be legal for 12 continuous hours. Police, fire, and emergency medical services will be unavailable until tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. when the purge concludes. Blessed be our new founding fathers and America, a nation reborn. May God be with you all. May God be with you all.
What's up, guys? Keyshawn, I got to ask, how does it feel to finally be on the podcast?
I'm glad to be on it this week after they've been a big win against the Raiders a few weeks ago when everybody was saying it couldn't be happen. It's feeling good.
Yeah, man, that was a big win. It was definitely fun after the Raiders used his promo segment to call you out. That worked just about as perfectly as I could have envisioned that segment going, so I think everybody really enjoyed that. So we're going to kick it off straight into the first segment, which is Get to Know 49ers. You guys will probably start to find a little bit of similarity with these guest podcasts. So I'll kick it off. 49ers, how long have you been playing Madden?
I think the first Madden ever picked up was Madden 1999 on my old Nintendo 64 up in my little room when I was a little kid.
So I was wondering, who's your favorite real-life NFL player?
Favorite player right now, honestly, would have to be Todd Gurley. He's a beautiful running back. I see him developing to be one of the best running backs in the league over the next few years. I don't think Bell will be able to keep up because I just see Gurley getting better and better each year.
Do you follow college football at all, or just mainly pro football?
Mainly pro football. College football just is not as lights out, in my opinion. You don't see as many huge things every single game, and it's not exciting for me.
Man, I was wondering, outside of Madden, what's your favorite hobby?
I guess mainly for me, I enjoy playing different instruments and whatnot, just something to do with my hands. I can't sit still.
How long you been playing the guitar?
I started teaching myself a couple years ago, I think. I really don't like other people showing me things. I kind of enjoy just learning myself because it feels more like an accomplishment then.
It's 4th and 12. You're down 4 points with under a minute, and you need this conversion. You are at your own 37. What play do you call?
I kind of always call the same play, honestly, and I don't know how nobody's figured it out, but it's the cross drags out of the trips Y. I have either Cobb or Cook sitting in that middle with either 91 or 95 speed coming across, and it can't be covered if you're in zone. If you're a man, you're going to get absolutely blown apart too. And I'm surprised not one person yet has figured out how to cover that. That's why I have most of my conversions where they're at.
What do you value, or what do you think is the most overvalued and undervalued position in the draft every year?
Now that we're a few seasons in, it feels more that the quarterbacks aren't as needed because everybody has who they have. I was able to get Franklin at the 30th pick last year, and he lit up the league this season if I didn't suck so much and throwing interceptions all the time. So at this point, it'd probably the quarterbacks one of the most undervalued, and overvalue is either running back or cornerbacks because of their insanely high combat stats. And like the 99 speed corner that Jocks got last year, it's absolutely insane with the stats. But I think everybody goes a little bit overboard with him because they don't go as deep as some other positions will. So they'll just let him go in the first 3-4 picks. Most of the good ones are gone.
Yeah, and I've noticed with the cornerbacks, I mean, it's so easy to get lost in the attributes and the combine stats. But it seems like to me, even if you get the very best one in the draft, unless your corner, unless your secondary is just absolute shit, they don't make a huge impact on that first year, usually because their play rec and awareness is garbage. Now, after you have a year to, dev that up a little bit, it seems like it matters a little more. But, yeah, no, I agree with that take. What do you think, Marty, on that one?
Yeah, I definitely have to say that cornerbacks are, it just seems that Madden kind of like loads them up with these just like God-given attributes and talents. So why wouldn't you get the player with the best, capability to get better, just based on what he has already? You can't. It's hard to buy speed. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, that's true. And as these leagues go on too, you start to see some of the wide receivers that were so coveted early on, they really start to lose some of their speed. They'll keep their catching stats, but like I noticed AJ Green even dropped to 89. So I guess that's a point to, the quarterbacks. Maybe they are more valuable because their speeds will be 96, 95, 97, and they can certainly keep up. But they still kind of, I don't know, because the way this Madden was designed, they get destroyed in one-on-one plays against guys that have elite catching.
Right. Yeah, dude, I totally agree. Like I had a guy just like this in Hub. His first year, he got torched, even though he was 90 man coverage, 90 zone coverage by the end of the year. It was that play rec, it's just, that's where they suck at. And, they just go through those growing pains as a rookie, sometimes even a little bit more than a year, but I think they pay off in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. I've found that the most frustrating thing for me to play against is when somebody has at least two corners that have 90 plus press. Man, it can be a pain in the ass, especially if they have a good pass rush, to really get much going in the deep passing game.
This is kind of another football history. Who do you see as America's #1 NFL icon? I mean, that's like any great of all time, like Deion Sanders or Staubach or.
Honestly, who doesn't know who Joe Montana is? He played great during his career. He has a memorable face. He's had a memorable career of just kind of lighting up teams each year. He's never just sucked at one point. He's been consistent throughout his career. It's just somebody that a name almost anybody will know across the nation.
Yeah, Joe Montana's my favorite quarterback, bar none. I mean, he had so many Super Bowl wins. He showed up for each and every game. It seemed like he is kind of the antithesis to what I think people would want to see as out of Tom Brady. You didn't really hear a lot of people shitting on Joe Montana. Even guys who were fans of other teams. Just for whatever reason, he had that likable characteristic about him, and of course he could always perform on the field. I don't know if it's because he appeared maybe as a smaller guy, maybe people felt like he was a little Drew Brees. Man, he is hands down my favorite player in the history of the NFL. All right, well, 49ers, it was great getting to know you. Now let's all go Rosterbate.
Oh, yeah.
That's right, you freaks. You know what that sound means. It's time to Rosterbate. Pull down your pants and get excited because we're going to go over the 49ers roster. I'll kick it off. I'm going to go with Bubba Benjamin. Not only does he have a cool sound, but he was hella productive in 2018. If you look at his stats, he's been in the league since 2016. His first year in the league, he had 36 attempts on 157 yards and 1 touchdown. That's pretty awful. That's worthy just to sit on the bench. Next year, he went from Colts over to Miami. He had 6 carries, 26 yards, and 10 yards is his longest run. Another garbage year. And then he got shipped from Miami over to Atlanta. He didn't fare too well in hot Atlanta. He had 3 attempts with 5 yards. And then the Falcons shipped him on over to 49ers. He got a decent amount of carries his first year, probably in a backup role. He got 98 carries, 508 yards. He had a nice little average of 5.2 yards per carry and 8 touchdowns. But 2018 was his year to shine. He had 261 attempts, 1,393 yards, and still kept that average at over 5 yards to carry, right at 5.3. Even had one nice long run at 76 yards and had 12 TDs. He may not be the best player on the 49ers roster, but he certainly was one of the more productive. I think we've all found as this league is going on that players that have a reliable running back make it a lot easier for them to convert on third down. I noticed myself when my running back went down, my third down percentage went from 50% to 33%, which was pretty killer for me down the stretch. So with that being said, Marty, who'd you pick?
Yeah, I think Bubba Benjamin is a great pick. I think he's a great player. 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 I think Yeah. So I'm gonna go opposite. I'm gonna go defense. And I really think that the guy that really stands out. It was hard to pick, but Jadeveon Clowney, I really like this guy. So last year he had a combined 82 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 2 INTs, and it's just like crazy production. I know the sack numbers may seem low, but I think that's because he has 90 zone coverage, so he's spending a lot of time covering wide receivers and tight ends. I think that's what makes so much of the Niners defense so frustrating to play against. So let's go some of his other stats. He's 6'5". He's a freak Cardinal athlete. That's why he was number 1 overall, despite all kind of the injuries that have happened. He just has these freak body features: 266 pounds, 87 speed with 90 excel. He has 88 power move, 82 finesse move, 98 block shed with the confidence, and like I said, 90 zone, 93 hit power, and 91 tackles. So you're looking at one of the very few linebackers in Madden that can really just do it all. He's just the premier linebacker that you can play 4-3 end with, 4-3 outside with, and you could probably even user him in the middle if you really wanted it to do that, So I think Jadeveon speaks for himself on that 49ers roster.
Clowney's historically in Madden is one of my favorite players, and what I was really impressed with him on this roster and this iteration of Madden in this league is how much dev has been put into him. Anybody who's had Clowney in Madden 16 knows that his coverage stats are shit. His play rec and awareness are usually lower too. And Marty pretty much covered all the points into home run. I mean, he can literally do it all. He can play probably really any linebacker. I mean, you could even put him at middle linebacker if you wanted to, and he could do damage. He's got hit power, he's got cover stats, and he can rush the quarterback, and he can get after the running back. There's really not much more you could ask out of a linebacker. So 49ers, who did you pick?
I'm going to take my guy Brennan Cooks. He's been almost my go-to receiver with his 95 speed every season, but the fact is he doesn't play only receiver. It's his kick returns where he's most deadly. He ended up with, I believe, his second most touchdowns last season. Between looking at his stats, he's got 95 speed, 94 juke, it's 97 with a confidence. He's got 92 elusiveness. He's just hard to bring down. A lot of people were giving me crap saying he's 5'10", he's not worth much when I tried to trade him at the beginning of last season, which I'm glad I did not do, because past couple of seasons he's been getting around 60 receptions in total. He got 16 touchdowns last year, 7 this year with the rookie quarterback, which is going to look up next season, I can promise you that. 1,500 yards last year, 1,100 this year, averaging 21.6 last year and 21.8 yards per reception. Fact is, he doesn't play this overneath. I'm not throwing verticals to him. He gets most of his yards from his yak. I throw it to a little inside, a little corner, a little slant, something like that, and he just tears apart because he could not be caught up to.
Yeah, when I think of Cooks, I think about the game that probably most of us in the league watched, or at least those of us that are, active in chat, is in the Raiders game. And not only did he have a productive game just in general, he also had that huge kick return that I felt like swung the momentum back in your favor.
Yeah, I think Brandon Cooks is just he's a small guy, but he plays about 3 times his size. This is just incredible what he does. And I think he's kind of one of those players that would be very hard to replace on a roster, I think.
All right, guys, so that wraps up the roster bait. You can get a towel and clean yourself off, and we're going to move on to our next segment, which is the promo segment. This is my personal favorite segment, and 49ers will take this opportunity to call out some people in the league.
All right, I'm going to start with one simple one. Jocks, I brought you into this league 2 years ago, or 2 seasons ago, I guess. And I was talking to you because I know you can play well. You've been tanking for the past 2 seasons. Quit this shit. Honestly, I know you're a good player. I know that you've rebuilt this roster from the ground up. Literally, this team was trash. I'm looking to see you in at least the playoffs, if not further with that next season. My second call out will be Ravens himself. he almost lost his confidence in that last game in his playoffs last season to where I know he plays much better than that. I pegged him for the Super Bowl, and he played like a little bitch that game. I almost laughed. I almost laugh at it because I don't even know what he did. He just decided to give up almost. My third and final one is the obvious Packers. Where to start with you? I've never seen this much luck in my life in a game of Madden. There's been games to where I've seen your defensive lineman pull interceptions, one-handed Odell from the ground. I don't know how. I don't know how far up the ass you've taken it from the Madden gods, but dude, just quit with all of your luck. And I guess I might have rounded out with one final one. New guy, Chargers. You've been slightly less than enjoyable with me in the chat. You seem to like to start things, which, you know what? I'm the same way. I understand where you're coming from, but I expect to see you turn up next season. If you play like absolute shit after talking shit to anybody, I'm just gonna laugh at you nonstop every day. Every single day of next season. If I see you get under 500, the season after that, every single day, I will be messaging you saying how much that you're terrible at this game.
Woo! That's right. Keyshawn's just calling motherfuckers out, including myself, which I could have done without that. Now we're going to kick on into Marty's segment. Marty's going to go through some draft picks for us and make some predictions and talk about some players. So, Marty, why don't you take it away?
All right, man, let's do it. Let's get this draft preview. So I'm going to go through the top 5 I see happening in the first round in order. So let's kick it off. Colts, I think they've really kind of hit it off with the last year's pick with Stephen Coleman. This year, though, I think instead of a most talented player, I see them going with a need. I see them taking the top signal caller in the draft this year. And this guy, his name is Blair Bray, quarterback out of Alabama. So he's not going to blow you away with his size or kind of prototypical QB size. He's not like Phillip Rivers or Peyton Manning size. 6'1", 218. But what really makes him stand out is his speed. This guy has a blazing 85 speed. So I see him being very furious on the ground too. He's got an A- throw power, A- throw on the run, and a B+ short accuracy. So, you know, if all else, he's good in the short passing game. He's certainly going to be good in the play action because of that A- throw and run. And then he has A- throw power. So by all means, he's not a wussy like Denard Franklin with his 88 throw power.
This guy, to me, he kind of looks like a Russell Wilson clone a little bit, maybe with a little less of a cannon. But, I mean, he's going to come in and make noise from day one. Of course, it's easy to take Cinderella to the ball every year when you're picking number one because you're tanking, cheesy. But anyway, so yeah, who you got next?
Yeah, so all right, so we talked about this right with the cornerbacks, and I really see this is where the big streak of cornerbacks is going to happen in the draft. So number 2, the Chargers have this pick. So I see them taking, you know, it's kind of a controversial pick because really who's the best cornerback in this draft? Is it Jeffrey Cooper or is it Will Patrick? You know, at first glance, you could look at them both and say, oh, man, they're the same thing. It's potato. But really, I see the Chargers taking Jeffrey Cooper here, and I'll tell you why. His press is probably the best in the league, in this draft, at least, with a B+ press. You know, he's 6'2", 213. He's 21 years old, certainly very young. And he comes out of Tennessee. So we got another SEC school here in the top 5. But yeah, B zone coverage. His man coverage needs a little bit of work. It's at C+ right now. But I think with a season of dev, it could certainly be up in the mid, probably 80s. 93 jump. And here's the cool thing about him is his versatility. He's got 85 strength. So you could definitely, I think, put him up there covering the safety spots and be confident with him there. But I think his 94 speed would be best used in the corner spot. He's also got a combined 3-cone shuttle time of 10.88 seconds. So that's a pretty high Excel there. I would probably say 95 plus Excel there. So I think that's where the Chargers go right there is Jeffrey Cooper.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I thought that the video that leaked of him wearing the gas mask, smoking what appeared to be marijuana, might hurt his draft status, but apparently the Chargers doesn't care too much about that video. So I see him going as well. I mean, we all talked about how cornerbacks can be a little overrated, but in that same breath, I would take him at second as well. So I can't really argue with anybody making that pick.
And looking at that, I agree with the versatility between the corner, the speed, but who knows how this new Chargers plays. He might throw him back at safety and use him a little bit, which I personally like to do, but my safeties just aren't quick enough, and that can be a deadly position all over the field with him.
All right, so number 3, the Redskins are picking. And this is important to remember that this is a New England pick that they traded to the Redskins for Peters and Hightower. So it's interesting to see what the Skins will do with this opportunity to get such a high pick. And I see them going with the first player that's not out of the SEC in this draft, cornerback Will Patrick. This guy is a freak of nature. He's 6'2", 211, and he's 22 years old, so he's very young as well. His zone coverage right now is at B minus man coverage, so you can be very safe to be a day one starter there at the 1 or 2 corner spot. His press is it's not the prettiest C plus press right now, but I think, again, if you keep deving this guy's the limit. He's sitting at 95 speed, 92 jump, and a combined 3-cone and shuttle time of 10.93. So this guy, I mean, there's, like I said, it's really not that much difference from Cooper. I mean, you're getting a great player here, and he's 82 strength too, which, I mean, again, the versatility, I think that that's just a quality that's very hard to come by in Madden. So versatile players get picked high, and so that's where I think the Skins go here.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of us who invested a lot of time into Madden 15 will remember that strength was the telltale sign for cornerbacks that you were getting a beast. Of course, in drafts in Madden 15, it wasn't quite as obvious who was going to be a bust and who was going to be great. Of course, in this Madden, the question more is who's going to be a star dev, fast dev, average dev, slow dev. We can kind of tell at least who's, roughly could be a starter versus a role player versus a backup based on combine scores and attributes. One thing I like about this cornerback and the guy that we're saying is going to go as number 2 is the jump. I love having a tall cornerback who has that high jump. So when you play guys that have wide receivers, 6'4", 6'3", with 95, 96 jump, at least it gives you an opportunity to play them one-on-one and maybe bat that ball down or get the rare interception in the one-on-one situation.
All right, so kind of to keep going on this corner spree, the Lions are picking next at number 4, and I see them, kind of following the same path right here. The next guy on the board is Diamond Blake, cornerback, and we're going back into the SEC. This guy comes out of Georgia, so SEC's on fire. The thing that kind of puts him in this third spot, I think, in terms of cornerback ranking is his size. He's 5'11". I know, people are going to look at that and say, oh, well, he's kind of small, but I still think that this guy plays big. I mean, he's got 93 jumps, so that's something you kind of need to, not let the bias get too heavy on. He's 22 years old, very young. So right now he has a B-plus man coverage. So he kind of has that up on Will Patrick and Jeffrey Cooper there. B zone coverage and C-plus press. So he's kind of weak on the press, but again, shouldn't be a problem to develop with the youth there. He's 94 speed, so he can certainly hold his own and hang up there with Jeffrey Cooper and Will Patrick. His Excel's kind of a little bit slower than the other 2 guys, but it's still pretty high. It's sitting at a combined 11.01 seconds, 3-cone and shuttle time. But again, I think Diamond Blake is kind of the obvious guy to go here with the Lions. Certainly in a division with receivers that or that big. So
And with a name like Diamond Blake, how could you not take that guy? He sounds like some badass like 80s action star, fighting Stallone or, somebody like that. But yeah, I mean it's typically that's how these drafts go. We see maybe a quarterback taken first if it's somebody as good as the guy this year, and then it's just like cornerback, 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 cornerback. I agree with you. I don't really see it going too much different because especially this year since there's no dominant wide receivers, they're all pretty. They all have pretty bad speed. I think the highest
God,
speed I
yeah.
saw was like 92. Which I don't know about you, Marty, but I was kind of hoping to at least grab one fast wide receiver in this draft, but shit is not happening. So.
Oh man, I'm very disappointed too. When I saw the fastest guy was 91, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. It's like every year they spit out 3 or 4, and this year there's like none. So, but you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I was looking at that, and really I think where that kind of talent spread to in one cluster, it was the tight end position. Certainly a lot of depth there this year.
Yeah, I agree. There's one specifically that looks really good. I don't really need a tight end. I don't use one as much anymore in my play style, but if I did, there's definitely a guy in there that I would snag or try to.
I mean, me personally, I'm slightly glad I traded away a lot of my draft picks. I see the same thing where there's a couple good tight ends in there. I really don't need secondary, and I honestly hate secondary in the draft because that's what everybody takes is corners, quarterbacks, and running backs at first. But I remember there's one tight end, I think he was 6'4". I'm not going to say which one, that looks like he could really light up the field this year.
Yeah. All right, so to round up my top 5 predictions of this year's draft, the next pick at number 5 is the Texans, which is me. So I was thinking about this quandary I'm in, and it's like, do I go out and reveal my draft information? So I'll tell you what. Let's just say if there was a report at what the Texans are going to do at 5, let's just say hypothetically speaking, it's out there. I'm going to go and say that the Texans have their eyes on a guy coming out of Nebraska, just like Will Patrick, right end Ben James. He's a pass rusher for sure, but he's got freak size and capability. So he's 6'6", 265 pounds. I mean, that size right there alone reminds me of Jadeveon Clowney, 21 years old. And so he's got B pursuit, B finesse move, and B hit power. He's sitting at 83 speed, which I think will be, useful coming off the edge if I were to put him in a scheme there. And he's got a combined 3-cone shuttle time of 11.377 seconds. So, his Excel's up there probably in the 90s. A little bit under the 90s, probably around 88, 87, somewhere there. But I really think that this guy has just kind of a lot of versatility to really kind of disrupt a quarterback's game plan. So, but again, this is all hypothetical. That's some like reports out there of what the Texans are going to do at 5.
All right. Well, thanks, Marty Melkiper. We appreciate your input, and I think there's a lot of valuable information in those top 5 picks. Marty's had his ear to the ground. He's been in DMs, messaging everybody, using every Jedi mind trick he can to figure out who's taking what to set himself up for the biggest steal in the draft at number 5. So with that being said, we're going to kick it over to the next segment. All right, so it's time for another installment of the Pick 6 Power Rankings. I know a lot of people enjoyed this segment, and a little draws up a tiny bit of controversy when we do this. So I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to start and really rattle the cage. Not so much because he did win the Super Bowl, but our lovely Canadian maple syrup drinking Packers for number 1 in my power ranking. He went in and won the Super Bowl. I picked him to make it to the Super Bowl. However, I did not see him winning the Super Bowl, so that was a bit of a shock for me. But once I saw he was playing Dolphins, I kind of felt like he was going to go ahead and win it. Next, I've got Raiders. Raiders took a little bit of a step down this year, but every game he lost was close. It wasn't like he got blown out. I think the only game, maybe the Dolphins put a little bit on him, but he was in every game he played. I don't know really what happened. I think Raiders is probably spending a little too much time with his girlfriend. I envision him getting his nose back to the grindstone. I know just from the conversations I've had with him, he seems more than eager to start kicking asses and taking names moving forward in this season. After Raiders, I've got Dolphins. Dolphins really came on the scene this year. He used Cam Newton to, the full extent that he could. It seemed like every pass Cam Newton threw was just right on the money. Even when it wasn't, the wide receiver would just end up with the ball. Looking over his schedule, though, I think he only beat maybe three or four teams with a winning schedule in the regular season. But that really didn't matter. He got in the playoffs, and he pushed his way through and got to the Super Bowl and lost a tough one to Packers. Now, here's where I felt like things got a little more interesting. I think there's a couple players that could make arguments to be at this spot going into next season. I went with Browns. I felt like Browns would probably be my pick for most improved from last year to this year. He won a lot of games, a lot of close games, but towards the end when it counted, he really started putting people down, knocking them out. I thought he would make it a little bit farther than he did in the playoffs. Unfortunately, he ran into some trouble and got beat by Dolphins and missed out on going to the Super Bowl. Next, I've got our guest today, Keyshawn, 49ers, sitting at 5. Unfortunately, Keyshawn's playoff game got simmed. Nobody likes to see that, and I really hope that doesn't happen again in the playoffs. That's not something we want to make a habit in our league. That really cut him short in the playoffs, especially after he had his big victory against Raiders, which we all enjoyed and celebrated. Of course, we love whenever Raiders has to take an L. And then wrapping up at number 6, I've got myself. Previously, I probably would have had myself at number 2, but I took a bit of a fall, admittedly. My running back went down, and then I just kind of got in a funk on defense more than anything, and just people started running the ball on me, which usually does not happen. So that's my pick 6. I'll kick it over to Marty and see what he's got.
Yeah, man, I was surprised you put yourself there at 6, honestly. So that's what's going to kind of differentiate with our power rankings. So I'm going to kick it off. This was kind of a hard choice for me, but I had to still go with the Raiders here at number 1. They finished the season 14-2. We had a lot of people had the Raiders going for 16-0 really, but I think those two losses, credit to the 49ers for pulling that off. But I just feel like the Raiders' pedigree in this league just speaks for itself here, and I really think they're going to bounce back stronger than ever, which is bad news for the rest of us. But so I got them at number 1. For number 2, I got the defending Super Bowl champions, the Packers. They finished at 12-4. A lot of people really didn't believe in the Packers going in and having a chance of winning the Super Bowl, but they proved me wrong. They proved a lot of people wrong, and so I think they deservedly deserve to be here at 2. But that being said, they have a lot to prove. They just lost a lot of people that helped them get there to the Super Bowl with that huge trade earlier today to the Redskins. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. A lot of things happen when you change the team chemistry. So, at number 3. I still believe in you, Ravens. So I got the Ravens here at number 3. But, I just think that one thing a coach doesn't really have control of is injuries. And certainly the injury bug bit the Ravens last season. So they kind of stumbled a little bit because of that. It screwed some things up. Definitely the run game, which, in turn has a lot of effect on how your defense plays. So I think it was just kind of a snowball effect there for the Ravens, but I see them bouncing back strong. So I got them at number 3. Number 4, I got the Finns. Finished the season 14-2, and we're at the Super Bowl representing the AFC. So, you may say, oh, well, the Finns should have been there at 3. I don't know. I think this is a good spot to put the Finns, and they may prove me wrong next season. And I think they really did play well. I just see the other teams ahead of them slightly. And number 5, this is a guy that I was really impressed with when I played in the playoffs. I got the Browns here. We just had such a just a tooth and nail game. I mean, back to back, it was like a slugfest. I mean, literally down to the last 15 seconds, it was 24-24 until he kicked the game-winning field goal. But so I played this guy. I think he has a tremendous talent on defense and just an ability to kind of swing momentum his way. So I put the Browns here at 5. And then at 6, I got the Niners. They are guests here. They finished 12-4 last season. Denard Franklin was really impressive coming on to the team. So I think if he can continue playing and probably elevate his gameplay, the sky's the limit for the Niners. And I mean, what else can you say? I mean, the Niners defense speaks for itself. Certainly star-studded. And so I got the Niners here at 6.
Nice. Who you got, 49ers?
All right, I got to go with the Raiders. I'm sorry, everybody, but those 2 big losses, I think, kind of chipped away at his confidence a little bit. He didn't play as well as he normally does until that huge shootout with the Browns. That was absolutely crazy watching that game, but right there shows you what he can do with his offense. No matter what you try to do, the Browns is an amazing defensive player. He made him look like a child. At number 2... I'm going to be a little bit different than the rest of you guys. I honestly think the Browns can sit up in here. He plays great. I love watching him play. I see myself and my play styles in the way he plays, and I really appreciate that in his defense. I mean, yes, there are certain people who figure that kind of stuff out and absolutely demolish us like Packers did to me last season, which won't happen again, I promise you that. But I can see him really fitting away in, maybe representing the AFC in the Super Bowl next year, but he's going to the playoffs at least. At 3rd, Ravens, after my call-out, I have to tell you that you're going to take this 3rd spot. I mean, of course, the AFC yet again dominates these power rankings for me, but you're a great player. Your defense is absolutely phenomenal. Your pass rush is just stupid. I thought I had a good pass rush until I watched your games, and I swear to God, you had somebody touching the quarterback every single play. Sitting at 4th, I would have to put Packers. I mean, it definitely helps to be as lucky as him in winning games. There's people like the Skins, for example. I kind of like watching their games because Madden clearly hates them, and it's absolutely hilarious to me. But Packers, he seems to never suffer from this. He never has a game that's bad luck. He always just seems to pull some kind of bullshit by the end of the game to win it. I don't know how, but he does it. At 5th, I'm putting myself. I don't want to talk too much about myself because I already do enough in the chat. I rely on my defense. I plan to continue to do that, and I don't see anything slowing down. And finally, at 6, I'd have to say the Dolphins. You won't put him up super high just because he made it to the Super Bowl, but watching his games throughout the season, he had a few good games. He had a handful of bad games, too. He's not as consistent as others people ahead of him. I mean, I'm not saying I'm consistent, but he definitely has his downfalls every few weeks. So I could see him maybe taking a hard loss in the playoffs, maybe week 1 like he did the past couple of seasons.
So let me ask you guys, because it's something I was thinking about when I made my power rankings. Who do you see being on the bubble? Because, I mean, you look at kind of the landscape of the coaches, and the teams we have in our league, and Bucks is somebody whose record was really, really good last year, and he had some really nice wins, but none of us put him in our pick 6. Why do you guys think that is?
I mean, the Bucks himself admits a lot that he doesn't know. He doesn't think he should be playing like that. I mean, if you're looking at his stats from the last season, there was nothing phenomenal. His highest rated stat was 27.4 points a game, which is 13th on offense. He plays a pretty good defense against the pass, but the rushing game has seemed to absolutely obliterate him last season, which I see more teams shifting towards that, because who doesn't love to run the ball, get down and dirty?
Yeah, I mean, I think that after the Gurley trade, just something kind of happened with the Buccaneers, things weren't the same. And I mean, it does affect your run game. And so I think that's just kind of why he's out on the bubble. But, it doesn't say anything wrong. It's just all it says is, hey, you're a good team. There's just teams that are a little bit better ahead of you, So there's certainly a lot of room for the Bucs to come out swinging. But I do believe that kind of the inconsistency in the run game due to Gurley did kind of affect his mojo.
Yeah, and when I last checked, he was unable to trade Gurley, right? He still has him on his roster.
Yeah, he still has him, but I mean, people make it sound like, now he won't get traded, but I mean, it's still Todd Gurley. He just has to land in the right hands. And I mean, we have until week 8 of the trade deadline. So, if you ask me personally, I don't think Gurley will end up as a Buccaneer by the end of the season. No way. I don't believe that. I think he's still going to be traded.
Well, Marty, you had Gurley on your team. I mean, I know when AO2 had him, we all saw how successful somebody could be with him. How did you feel about his performance when he was on your team?
I liked him. I did. He did everything right. So there were some games. The only thing was he was kind of a little inconsistent with me. So I never knew which Gurley I was going to get most of the time. But a lot of times I would have games with 18 carries and 42 yards. But then I would have games with 11 carries, 142 yards. So it was kind of a Jekyll and Hyde thing. I never knew which Gurley I was going to get. And to be honest, I think that from the get-go, Gurley was more of a luxury for me. He wasn't someone that I necessarily needed. And I just don't know if he fit the kind of scheme that I like to run offensively either. But I think it worked for what we had, Todd Gurley out there listening, man, I miss you.
Did you feel like his lower excel hurt his performance?
Well, the thing is that if there was a hole and you hit it with Gurley, it had to be a hole for him to kind of get away because, like you said, that Excel it took a while. But, I mean, certainly once you're past the 50, Gurley's gone. He's got that. And I was planning on making him 94 speed. Here's kind of an interesting fact that I was too ashamed to admit in chat, but I'm owning up to it now since I'm not the owner of Gurley's rights anymore. But I accidentally auto progressed about 13 XP on him at the end of the first season. And I was going to put that into speed. I was really pissed.
Damn, yeah. I can't imagine him having 94 speed. That would be pretty destructive.
But, going back to what you mentioned about teams on the bubble, we just did the top 6. I think there's about 4 other great teams out there. And so we named the Bucks. I would put the Giants out there. I have confidence in myself, but I'm nervous, man. I'm not going to lie. I lost Strong and Langford, so I lost a lot of juice to my offensive, scheme. So we'll have to see what happens there. And certainly now with the Colts declaring a non-tanking season, we'll see what happens in that division. It's going to be a really exciting year in the AFC South this year. And then for that 10th spot, I have to maybe backtrack a little because now I'm kind of, I don't really know who I could put there, but, there's certainly someone there.
Yeah, one would hope that there's at least one more person to fill that. But no, I'm glad you brought up Giants. A. Walker, man, he has come a long way in this league, and I don't know what has been the difference for him because he's always been a great player. But he made big strides this last season, and I could easily see him making it quite possibly to the Super Bowl. Maybe not next season, but the next after he really gets a couple more people on that team. But only time will tell. No.
Thing I noticed with Giants though was he had 4 or 5 games that were against the computer last year that I want to see another season of him pulling out a 13-3 record. Then I will start believing that he has something to pull out. It's just the fact that he played a lot that weren't against actual opponents. He even admitted this towards the end of the season. He doesn't think he was worth his record. But back to what Marty said earlier is there's a lot of teams that could fit up in there. I mean, Seattle's a good team. It might have a new user. We haven't touched on him at all, but I've seen him play pretty well before. Jocks also, I know he's a good player. I know he could probably beat me on even teams. And I think he's going to get up there. I'm going to have fun watching Marty have to toy with that.
Yeah, I got my eye on that. I'm really excited for that, because, I felt the last couple seasons were just kind of giveaway wins against the Colts. But now it's really going to be down, we'll see what happens. It's going to be dirty. Mac against his offensive line will be fun, I think.
Yeah, and of course the AFC just never gets easier. I don't know why it seems to be that way. Although I will say the AFC and the NFC seem to have a little more parity this past season, so that was nice to see. All right, guys, well, that wraps up our power rankings. Now we're going to shift into a little fun segment where we'll pick the comeback coach and the comeback player of the year for the 2019 season. All right, so it's prediction time. We're going to pick the comeback coach and the comeback player of this current season, and I'll kick it off. So I've got the Falcons, who finished 8-8 this past season. Zane's a good player, and his roster continues to get better and better. So I really see him with being able to utilize Beasley and Barr. There's no reason that he shouldn't be able to make the playoffs, especially in his division. So we'll see what he can do. As far as the comeback player, I was a little selfish and went with my own roster just because I'm excited to have this guy on my team. I picked up Amari Cooper in a recent trade. I was looking last season, he only had 6 touchdowns, which is absolutely unacceptable for a guy like Amari Cooper. All his catching stats are mid-90s. Route running is 99. His speed is pretty good, but he does have a little bit of a slower excel. But for a guy like him, I'm not going to be using him to burn people anyway. He'll be a good possession receiver, and then he'll be able to offset having Green on the other side, who a lot of times when I played people last year, I noticed that they started double-teaming Green, and I struggled a little bit in that scenario. So I'm hoping that Cooper will be able to pick up the slack. I see him having around 10 to 13 touchdowns this year. Probably about 1,200 yards. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think Cooper's going to really pick up the slack for your offense, so you gotta keep her there. All right, so I think this is pretty obvious. I think that comeback coach of the year is going to have to be the Colts. They have a lot to prove, and certainly we all know that this guy can play. So I think that it shouldn't be very hard for him to go from worst to maybe, I don't know about first in the AFC South, but certainly I'm going to predict him at 9-7 this season. I really think that with Bray coming in, that offense is going to get some new hope, because EJ Manuel has just kind of sunk the ship the last 2 seasons. So I think that the Colts have a lot to fight for. As far as comeback player of the year, I'm going to go with a new Colts, and this is my ex-guy, Jalen Strong. I miss you. But so I had him in the slot. He had this season 40 receptions, 736 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And from what I hear, Colts is also going to man him in the slot, but I see him coming back, maybe something with around 1,100 yards this season and maybe, 11 to 12 touchdowns. So I think maybe in that Colts offense, he can do a little bit more damage just because of the versatility there. So we'll see.
Yeah, especially with the Colts drafting that quarterback, I can already envision the play action, him getting quote-unquote pressure in the pocket and rolling out and hitting Strong, for 20, 30 yards at a time. So I think Strong will have every opportunity to get the comeback player of the year.
I'm going to agree with Marty and the team with the fact that the Colts are going to be the comeback. He's been taking for 2 seasons, the 0-16 record last year, but he's built quite the team. I remember back when this team, I'm pretty sure, was under a 70 overall, but at this point he now has 7 defensive starters over 90 overall after confidence. And I am a firm believer that defense is what wins games, as in the actual football, what the Broncos proved last season against the Panthers, to where I think he's going to be able to slow down all the offenses that think they're good. A lot of people are going to underestimate him and think, oh, well, he's not that good because they've seen him play terrible, like that legendary 2 to 4 game against the Skins.
So let me ask you, man, because I'm curious. With just the kind of the talent in the AFC South, you can't sleep on the Jags either. The Titans got a new user who I think has a lot of potential also. Who do you see taking the AFC South next year?
From watching, I know Jocks from another league. I honestly think he might be able to steal it from you. I'm going to have you in second place because you're a good player. You had some terrible games last season. I know you can play better than that. Third, it'll be Jacksonville, and I think that's more of a loyalty to my old team. I know that has a good defense. I've seen he's traded a few players and make it more of his team, and sadly, Tennessee is going to have to take 4th. I have not seen him play much. From what I've seen, he's not a bad player. He's not amazing on the other end either, but all in all, I'm still going to stick with the Colts, finishing 11-5. And then back to my comeback player. I'm going to be slightly selfish, just like Ravens. Franklin, I threw 30 interceptions in 15 games with him because Breeze played 1 game. That's 2 interceptions a game. For him, I think he barely got a 100 quarterback rating, and for his stats, it should have been so much better. It's the interception that absolutely killed me game after game. I'm so sick of the fact that the 49ers has not lost a game yet while throwing 0 interceptions. That's what loses games, and if he comes back and plays without that, that's a good season for him, his team, and his development throughout his career, since he does have superstar development trait.
Yeah, I could see that too. I mean, we've got a lot of guys in this league that are going to be taking advantage of new players with all the trades going on. So there'll probably be a lot of guys vying for that comeback player of the year. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up that segment. The next one is a way too early Super Bowl prediction. So we're going to see who we think will definitely make it to the playoffs. I'm sure we'll do just as good a job as when Marty picked the Fighting Eagles to make it to the Super Bowl. And, of course, they made it all the way to the no, they didn't do too much. We're going to kick it off in that segment here in a minute. Okay, so I thought long and hard about who I was going to put in this Super Bowl if I had to choose from today. Now, the person that I picked from the AFC, some people might disagree, but I feel like it's his time to shine. He was right on the cusp of doing something great last season. He had a lot of games where he just seemed to be at the right place at the right time at the end, hit the field goal, win the game, get out of that stadium. So I see the Browns pulling off some upsets. I think he makes it to the Super Bowl. I think he'll beat Dolphins. There was a lot of lag in that game, a little bit of controversy. So next time around, I'm sure that won't be the issue if they do get to play. And I see the Browns making the Super Bowl. Who he'll be playing, I had a couple guys from the NFC that I kind of view as equals right now. But the one guy that seems to be a little bit ahead of everybody else is Packers. For whatever reason, he's able to really turn it on when it counts, whether it's if he's pissed off or it's a big game. He tends to take care of business, and there's really not much anybody's been able to do about it, especially last season. So got the Browns and the Packers. If I had to pick a winner, be the Fudge Packer. I mean, it would probably be gosh, I want to pick Browns, but I can't. I think Packers takes it again. Now, if by chance Raiders fights his way into the Super Bowl, I would pick Raiders to win that Super Bowl, but my gut tells me it's going to be Browns and Packers this year.
Yeah, so I had a similar prediction. I totally agree with you about the Browns. I think that they had some kind of controversy in the playoffs with the lag, and I mean that was kind of a fluke because I know he puts a hell of a fight after our playoff game in the wild card round. So I really think the Browns will kind of not necessarily right the ship, but just kind of take that next step that's necessary to get to the Super Bowl. They have a good defense. Their offense is just loaded with, 97 speed guys. Speed kills. So, I see the Browns in the AFC. For the NFC, I'm going to go ahead with our guest, the Niners. And we kind of touched on this, but I think he's kind of going to get things under wrap with Franklin and the turnovers. So, that new offensive coordinator out there in San Francisco will help get that done with Franklin. I think that'll make the difference. So I'm going to go with those two, the Browns and the Niners. If I had to pick, that's a hard choice. It really is. But I would probably go with the Niners. His offense is it's wild, with Brandon Cooks there. So that's what I got.
To me, with the AFC, I'm agreeing with the Browns yet again. There's that playoff game I was slightly unhappy with. There should have been a restart completely, but Browns just gave in to Ravens' slight hand into it, and then mostly Dolphins just nonstop complaining about it. I do know that Browns had absolutely demolished the Dolphins earlier, and I feel like they'd do it again if it came to it. The NFC, I am so sick of Packers. I have 3 players that I'm gunning to beat, and I'm going to next time I meet them. They're the Ravens, the Browns, and the Packers. I had Raiders on this list, but that one's now off, and I'm guaranteed next time I see the Packers, I'm going to beat him, and I'm hoping it's in the playoffs and not the regular season. If it is, I guess I will beat him twice. I'm not going to let that kid get to another Super Bowl.
All right, Scrubs, that's a wrap on episode 3 of the Madden Scrubs podcast, and I'll see you all at the draft tonight. Try not to pick a bust. Later, taters.
Peace out.
Love is a guy that thinks he's